Thank you for joining us today. I usually start my presentation with a slide that says time is the only non-renewable resource. And I think for us, that's almost a key metaphor with which we build our platforms. Today we're going to talk about, H2O has been around since the first AI4 conference we've been presenting here. It's home to the world's largest number of Kaggle grandmasters, data science KGMs, and a place where we are looking at the world like from the eyes of a child, trying to learn and cry for what we want every day. I think I want to start off with thanking the community, the customers, makers past and present and future who've been part of the H2O movement. About 4 million data scientists use our platform every day, and we're super grateful for their feedback. Our customers, so very, very grateful for that. So today we're here to talk about our mission to kind of democratize AI. Ran into OpenAI, if you will, in the fact that they tremendously brought GPT and Gen AI into our homes. Everyone's using it. But we suddenly found that OpenAI wasn't open. So as a result, we decided to build open source LLMs and open source GPTs. So if you own your data, you can build your own LLMs. You can fine tune them, you can use them, start deploying them with vector databases and make them your own. So we think of, if you own your data, you need to, as an organization, own your GPTs, right? And what is LLM? LLMs are giving voice to purpose. So if you have purpose that needs voice, obviously LLM becomes just as important as anything else in the world. So that's a way to if you're a data scientist, you found an important insight, LLM gives voice to that. And open source is about freedom, not just free. And we announced a few projects on this. I'll be showcasing them in short order. And we're also building a large community and a community of partners. And we'd like to raise a forest, not just a tree. So if other entrepreneurs in the audience or data scientists, please come to us. We would love to partner, empower you with. Every community needs to build its own GPT, its own LLMs. It's including the LLMs of every organization, every nonprofit, for-profit organizations, nations, all of us will need. Today we're here, we started the company with a mission to democratize health with AI. And so we've seen such tremendous adoption over the last couple of years. So with that, I want to start actually getting us into the weeds a little. So GPT, H2O open source GPT, is actually plural. We're very pluralistic about the world. So essentially, what is the role of, we saw an incredible panel earlier of on the panel on healthcare and Gen AI. I don't know how this is showing. Okay, it's showing reasonably large. So what's the role of Gen AI in healthcare? Now, when you type a question like that, obviously, you're able to pull up all different LLMs, including ChatGPT here, GPT-3.5 Turbo. Now, this particular LLM bake-off that's happening here, this is Llama 2. This is Llama 2 13B and Falcon. We have fine-tuned some of them. Some of them are really good out of the box. There's no reason to change them. But this is using, obviously, public data source. So then comes the question, I want to use my own healthcare data. So we downloaded kind of the orange manual, so book of manual. So we're going to upload our own local data. Again, this entire Dockerized environment will run locally on your environment. So what is this manual? Let's go open and see. Well, it's giving a nurse drugs, therapies, and the codes for them, right? So I'm going to start asking it some questions on this document and start seeing if it can produce appropriate results. Many of you have probably seen a document like this running around. So what's happening behind the scenes while it's doing it? It's essentially creating embeddings for that document and putting put in the chunks, so the document is being read, just like classic PDF reading, chunked, put into a vectorized database, vector database, and then those embeddings are now going to start becoming your placeholders to get questions and answers from. Now, this part of the LLM world is getting more and more traction. We're beginning to see customers build localized environments, localized tests on this. Let me just, while that is doing it, try to get us into a second environment here, which will get us the data studio. So part of feeding LLMs with your private data is the concept of how do I take documents and create question-answer pairs, right? So question-answer pairs, how you're fine-tuning your data. Let me take a similar migraine document about migraine. Let me see if I can generate some questions on it. So I'm going to use some smart chunking here. This is our LLM data studio, which is allowing you to take data, the ETL for LLMs. Fine-tuning of LLMs needs essentially question-answer pairs. So you have large documents. Now, how do I feed them into my LLM so I can now fine-tune it? So the two different concepts we are touching here. One, asking good questions out of an LLM and based on feeding it new content using vector database. The second one is fine-tuning. So these are the two top-level concepts that are happening. You've seen several talks today, RLEF, and we'll touch some of them as we speak. So let's see, since the document has been uploaded, let's ask it it seems like I've jumped into a different one here. Quite a few of them here. So meanwhile, while our question answer test here has come up with a Q&A pairs, right? So the classic JSON. So what this one did is it took your PDF, the same headache, how to treat headache document, and created question answers from a standard PDF. So you take this standard PDF, now feed it into an LLM Studio, which we also have LLM Studio, which allows you to fine-tune your GPT. So it seems like we have uploaded this document here. So what are different types of migraine? Probably should be able to get some answers here. So, but I think that the concept of the cheaper version of how to get facts right is obviously through vector databases, right, and embeddings. So this is doing an embedding here and allowing you to use your LLM to use your local data, right, and you can essentially feed it not just one document, thousands, millions of documents, and now start giving questions and answers specifically coming from the document. We did, one of the things our team did is we ended up taking the va.gov website. Turns out it has a lot of documents, and here's one such document. It's able to essentially take those and actually give us a clear answer on what does, you can now feed it, not scroll a whole domain of, it could be your intranet, it could be your extranet. You can now create a crawler that steadily, so we created VA GPT. I hope in honor of helping our veterans, VA GPT, which essentially is helping, you now have crawled all of va.gov / all their PDFs. So now you can ask good questions on a lot of things. I saw some VA folks here. You can ask boring questions like what is travel allowance for a VA professional on a conference like this, right? For a day trip. It just goes, tries to find a particular document and pull out like administrative stuff, but it can essentially start giving you, and if it's a day trip, if it's a overnight trip, what you can get, things like that. So now obviously you're now essentially trying to now teach your LLM to be immediately productive on your local data, on-prem, or in air-gapped environments, or on your virtual private clouds. The cost of this is, the larger the model, the more the cost of the inference. So we have smaller models as well, but we're also working hard to reduce the cost of your inference as well. We have now about multiple X improvements from the TGI Hugging Face inference server to even further beyond. But I think getting that speed on the inference and scale, so the cost per question. So for democratizing health or democratizing an LLM means we're making faster, cheaper, and easier. And that's important. If it's easier, it's cheaper to install. This entire installation should take less than half an hour to install. It's a single Helm chart or a couple of Helm charts that can easily run on any cloud or on-prem. So that's kind of the faster, cheaper, easier story. This one, the next obvious thing to do is to see if we can fine-tune. What does it take to fine-tune an LLM? So there's a product called LLM Studio. H2O, we built this LLM Studio that allows you to then import data sets. So we downloaded the JSON from the data studio. We can now bring that into the LLM. So now you can essentially start fine-tuning LLMs. So that's kind of where the next side of this portion is, how do you get from essentially from one side of the portion of the picture to the other side. So taking LLMs, fine-tuning it, and we can fine-tune to the heart's content, right? So that we can actually pick different models, not just the latest Llama 2. Llama 2 is a little more expensive, but you can fine-tune Eleuther, the smaller. We saw a talk from H2O.ai, someone's audience. H2O GPT, fine-tuned versions of Falcons, right? So, but as new models are coming, we're essentially bringing them into the fold. Again, LLM Studio is also open source, so you should be able to install it and run it locally. All the various topics du jour, what is the length of the prompt, answer, right? What's question answers, what type of quantization, you might have heard about the word quantization thrown around. Int 4 is 4-bit quantization, so you can use quantization, different techniques. When people talk about RLHF, LoRa's, right, obviously, and then we have RLHF framework, so you can essentially start using different reinforcement learning, human feedback methods as well. So all of that stuff in wide open detail. So if you're figuring out how to fine-tune it for you, so you don't, or automate the ML for you, so you can automate the parameter search. But all of that detail in reinforcement learning, human feedback is all here as well. So in many ways, for customers trying to build models now or fine-tune their GPTs, one, take PDFs, convert to question-answer pairs, then fine-tune your healthcare data-specific LLMs on-prem without losing control or ownership of your data. When you actually run this experiment, typically it's doing, is essentially building continuously reducing error, accuracy. You can improve our blue score or improve our score across different LLMs, which brings us to the concept of how do you evaluate if you have a good LLM. And that's where the team put their hands together and they have Eval GPT. So how do you evaluate GPTs? And this is again a very, how chess grandmasters are scored and ranked, the ELO score. As you can see, open source is number 2 at this point. The world's best GPTs is GPT-4 right now, followed very closely by open source Llama 2 GPT. And then, of course, the LLMs that are following. We can see Claude 2 there. But this is the current score of different prompts. And so these are the various prompts. These prompts are not just on the knowledge. They're looking at harm. They're looking at recommendations. So different kind of techniques in different categories. You're now seeing greater than GPT-3.5 in just open source models. And this is a very simple, you can actually, so you can do a question, look at this series, what should come to fill in the blank? Is 24 or 26? It's probably 26. So that level ability to kind of, what's the right answer? You can get two different, which model's better. But it's a real kind of a competition bake-off, blind bake-off between different models. And this is a prompt. So now the reason we bring this up, this is also open source. evalGPT.ai is open source. We think that evaluation of LLMs becomes the more important aspect ahead. When generation becomes very table stakes, then curation becomes the real linchpin. So curating LLMs becomes very important. Data is also the most key. So we are democratizing. Obviously, the data.gov, the public data sources are available, but your private data, to the extent it can be part of the global health LLM, we're thinking of it in a very federated fashion, is going to be super keen. We are working with payers, we're working with providers, pharma. One of the most common use case for a use case like this is tamoxifen or any of these drug med reps. You can upload them and get it to talk like a med rep with your LLM. So you can actually reduce the time it takes to disseminate information into the field. Life scientists, we were working with one of the USDA geneticists was in the audience earlier, trying to see how we can break the token barrier. So we're trying to increase the tokens and individuals. So globally, it's a very starting movement around health LLMs. So we'd love for the audience to join us in this incredible opportunity to bring open source to help our own lives. One thing we do believe is that if you can't explain the concept very well, you can't, the insight dies on the Jupyter Notebook. So I think ability to kind of bring that to fore is going to be super important. And we basically still very, very early days of this world. Our customers have been behind us over the years, and thanks to them, we have incredible customer base globally. And most of them have now steadily beginning to adopt LLMs on-prem, on-site. And I want to leave with a couple of thoughts. Data is a team sport. So domain knowledge is still at the heart. Healthcare is very, very hard. It's not easy. And it is multi-dimensional problem, not just banking is easier. So for us, we are taking a 10 and a 50-year journey here. People ask AI. Most of the data scientists in the audience will be CEOs of Fortune 500 companies in the years ahead. So at the head of every table will be an AI scientist. And so we were allowed to welcome the leaders of the future to join and build a world which is equitable and can also bring change as we need it. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.